tradition of sitting your child on Santa's knee and telling them what you want for Christmas. Where does this all come from? Well, we're not 100% certain, to be honest, but there is some incredible similarities to an Old Norse practice and parts of the spirituality with a link to Odin, actually. So that's what we're talking about in this video. Now, of course, Santa Claus is originally based off of Saint Nicholas, the patron saint of children from the 3rd century in what is modern-day Turkey. But of course, this original Saint Nick bears almost no resemblance to the jolly bearded Nordic-looking Santa Claus. So we first start to see images of what we today know as Santa Claus in the 1700s. He was still venerated as a saint, most popularly in the Netherlands, and there he was called Sinterklaas. Shortly after, he was brought to New York by Dutch immigrants and the United States, where they would celebrate this saint in December. And in the early 1800s, we start to see images kind of more closer resembling what we know as Santa Claus today. A bit later, in 1841, in Philadelphia, a life-size Santa Claus model was built and thousands of children from all around came to see. And for some strange reason, the children all wanted to climb up on the statue and sit on this knee of Santa. Why is this? Hold that thought and I will tell you in a minute. Anyway, after that, the real men started to dress up as Santa Claus and around the holidays and collect money for charity, and then cameras came around and sitting on the lap of Santa became tradition, and taking photos with the kids around Christmas time. But this is nothing new. We have done something like this in our history before in the north of Europe. This goes back to the Viking Age, where parents would foster away their children, and by sitting their child on another man's knee, that would signal that the man would be the child's new foster father. There are many examples of this, but the most famous one is Harald Fairhair, who was good friends with the English King Athelstan. Now, King Athelstan was unaware of this Norse tradition, so King Harald Fairhair came and sat his son Håkon on the knee of Athelstan, and Athelstan had no chance to object. He thought he was just being cute, showing him his son. But later he finds out that this is a Norse tradition, and he agreed to foster Håkon. So Håkon was fostered and raised in England and became my favorite king of all time, actually. And interestingly enough, Håkon was the man who moved Yule, the Norse Scandinavian version of Christmas, from January originally into December like we celebrate it today. Now, I know this sounds strange to us today, adopting away your children to be fostered by someone else, but in Norse culture it was a totally normal thing to foster away at least one of your children, and it was actually a very happy time for all parties involved. It wasn't for a financial struggle or anything like that. It was a happy, positive event, and there are some who believe that this is actually a reincarnation ritual or an example of sympathetic magic. It's a long story, but I'll go into that in another video. So this memory is for sure in our DNA somewhere, as a new start and a welcome into a new family and a society and who we would become as we grow up. I know this is just a Norse thing, but all people in Northern Europe would have had kind of a similar tradition before Christianity came in. We were all one people if we go back far enough. So that's the sitting on the lap. What does that have to do with Santa Claus and Christmas? Well, who is the god of Christmas? Odin. Where is one theory where the jolly bearded version image of Santa came from? Odin. What was another name for Odin? Jólafaðir, and that basically means Father Yule or Father Christmas. On top of that, the worship of Saint Nicholas was thought to be imported to Scandinavia as a venerated saint in attempts to replace Odin and easier Christianize the people. Is sitting on Santa's lap a symbol of a tradition that we used to do a long time before Christianity? Maybe a young child as sort of an initiation and a welcome into the world by the Allfather Odin. It's possible, no idea. These answers are lost and they're not to be found in any of the sources that we still have today. They are just theories at the end of the day, but I have not seen any better explanations as to where sitting on the Santa's lap might come from and why were children always so eager to sit on Santa's lap. Is it memories in their DNA from 1,000 years ago coming up? You know, it's been on record and actually proven that children remember past lives sometimes. We all probably did the same when we were children, but we forgot now. We also know that most of our Christmas traditions have either Germanic or Norse pre-Christian origin, and we know that Santa Claus definitely does not look like the Middle Eastern original Saint Nicholas would have looked. We all know that Santa first came up in his modern image in the Netherlands in the 1700s, but he's probably much older than that. But either way, the Dutch, of course, followed the same religion as the Norse. They were just Christianized about 200 years before. So this ticks a lot of the boxes and fills in the blanks. It definitely seems like an assimilation of the Christian Saint Nicholas and the pagan god Odin. We all know these kinds of things happened. Pagan gods and celebrations became illegal in Europe, but people did not stop practicing them, so the ruling power simply changed the name and had them venerate a saint instead. Christmas and Yule is a perfect example of this. Check out my video on that in the link in the description, but we don't know for sure. Who knows? These are all just theories at the end of the day. What do you all think? Any traditions like this in your own country? If you're not Northern European, do your kids or do you have just as eager of a motivation to go sit on Santa's lap, or is it something you don't care about as much as us? Let us know, see what you think. Vi ses nästa gång.